All right. Hey, look, founders obsess over revenue. Operators obsess over throughput and margin. But why do so many businesses grow top line revenue while becoming less and less profitable? We've got the man today, Doug, my man. How are you?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me on today.
Super excited to have you on. Lexington Rose Consulting. I mean, you took your bumps and bruises. I know a little bit of your background from reading
Yep.
up on it. And, you were kind of seeing these PE companies come in and these like, hey man, what about me? What's going on with my equity? So super excited
Yep.
to have you on. It's a conversation that I have in the middle market all the time, right?
Sure.
Growing a business from 1 million to 100 million is no easy task, but there comes those times, right? Those opportunities
Yep.
where P comes a knock in or a strategic partner comes a knock in or something to that effect. So I'm excited to hear kind of how Lexington rose and what your thought process is of where you
Awesome.
started. So share with us a little bit of the background, right? Like, were you a corporate guy, like I just said right now? Were you experiencing some things, and then that's where the thought of Lexington comes? But we'll start with
Yeah,
that.
sure. So I've spent the last 25 years in the property and casualty insurance business on the retail agency side. So I worked in insurance agencies for 5 years, started one myself, owned the agency for 10 years, split with my partner, and then for the last 10 years I was the chief operating officer at a large local insurance agency. And during my tenure with this agency, we tripled our revenue from 4 million to 12 million in commission revenue. And we ended up selling to private equity, and I was just unhappy with how that transition went for me personally. I was there through the transition, but I was ready for a change. The insurance industry had kind of gotten a lot from me for 25 years, and I've always been passionate about teaching and helping others. And I've been a speaker for a lot of different entrepreneurial groups and nonprofits. So I decided to start a consulting firm where I'm now kind of bringing my talents and everything that I've learned to small businesses. To teach them how to avoid a lot of the mistakes that I've made along the way, and a lot of the things that I've learned along the way, and with specifically with private equity in mind, or mergers and acquisitions. That's a key area where it's really important for small businesses, or really any business, to be thinking about exiting years ahead of time, because of the amount of time it takes to really dial things in to get it looking sexy enough for the transaction to go the way you want it to go.
Yeah, look, I had a lady on, Erin Guthrie, here locally in Chicagoland from Exit Factor, and over a 3 year period is 100%. I mean, she wants to be ahead of the game,
Yep.
already testing certain things,
Yep.
operations and efficiencies and value adds and all that type of stuff. So it's
Yep.
an interesting time, obviously a little bit hard to convince some of these, hard-headed business owners, right? That
Yep.
we tend to be entrepreneurs, have their own kind of way of thinking.
Absolutely. And that's it's a tough nut to crack, but typically the people that are speaking to somebody like me about operations consulting and fractional COO type of stuff, they're already kind of the people that are that stubborn are typically not even engaging with
Yeah.
somebody like me. So people that are engaging with me and want to hear what I have to say and how I can bring value, it's like they're already halfway there, where they know that this is a route worth exploring. So I haven't had to deal with too much getting the door shut in my face.
All right. So look, I've got a little bit I was going to be a State Farm agent. I was
Okay.
in their agency pool,
Okay.
circa early 2000s, late 90s.
Okay.
And it was interesting, right? I don't know if you came from a brand or it
I
was
was
its own.
I actually started my career at Allstate. So I
Okay.
started in the exclusive agency kind of world, and then moved to an independent agency.
Okay. So, yeah, man, I mean, and it's interesting, right? Like, obviously you saw growth, you were part of growth, and then the beauty of insurance is the gift that keeps on giving,
Oh
right?
yeah, for sure.
MRR and ARR is a real thing in that
Oh yeah,
space.
there's nothing like
Uh,
it. Nothing
um,
like it.
but it's funny because a lot of people, have this weird, it's kind of like a car salesman, like, oh, you're in
Yep.
insurance.
Yep.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
like, well, it's
It's
like
very misunderstood. Very
yeah.
misunderstood.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I guess what are two things that maybe you learned in lessons in that space? Because, you know, acquiring, clients, having the right talent around you, recruiting, all these little things, along with obviously the operations and the back end stuff of things, are things that you learn a lot in that insurance world. What
Yeah.
were two maybe lessons that you could share with our community?
Specific to insurance, one of the most important things that I learned was the necessity of client segmentation
Mm,
and being really identifying who your core clients are and pursuing them and being willing to say no to clients that aren't a fit for you because the I'm sure a lot of your listeners know what the 80/20 rule is, where 80% of your revenue comes from the top 20% of your clients
mm,
and 20% of your revenue comes from the bottom 80% of your clients. It is shocking how like perfect that it's called the Pareto principle, how perfect the Pareto principle lines up with lots and lots of businesses. So when you look at a business like that has say 1,000 clients and 800 of them are bringing in only a few $100,000 in revenue and 200 of them are bringing in millions of revenue, that's eye-opening. So it's really,
mm.
really important to focus on that. And you have to make some hard decisions because a lot of businesses that kind of scrap their way up from nothing, you do it by being everything to everybody. And then when you need to start, but growth cannot come from continuing to do that forever. Any business that wants to grow past that scrappy first million in top line revenue has to move past that into client segmentation.
No, I feel a kindred spirit to it. Initially, when I sold my business in '09, I got into banking and I was
Mm.
kind of a jack of all trades, really. I got into the retail side. I didn't really know. I got into management and project management. And then when I moved over to commercial banking, you could be stuck with, it's called business banking, emerging
Yep.
middle market. And over the years, I feel like, man, I really have been super attracted to that 5 to 100 and even 1 to 100, really, because when you
Sure.
cross over seven figures, it's a special time. There's only less than 10% of businesses do it in America. A lot of
Sure.
people think, "Oh, yeah, I'm $1 million business." That's not easy to do. So,
No, it's not.
from a top line revenue standpoint. So interesting. Well, look, I'd love to get into now the story, right? So there is always an inflection point when people start to say to themselves, "Well, look, I could do this better. I have the ability to do this," or maybe here's a different direction. And you had 25 years in insurance. You
Yeah.
saw PE come in, and it
Yep.
sounds like there wasn't really a piece of that puzzle that you were a part of, meaning from the equity
Correct.
portion. So
Correct.
you learned, a lesson there
Yep.
that many of us learn, right? From a
Yep.
job mindset, employee mindset to an
Yep.
ownership mindset. What was
Yep.
that like? And where was then that transition that said to you, okay, hey, fractional COO is what I can go into the marketplace to do?
That's a great question. So yeah, so I was I kind of got tuckered out. The process of selling the agency that I was a part of was very, very heavy duty, and there's it just those transitions aren't for everybody. And everybody that goes through those transitions, the acquirer and the acquiree, everybody understands that not everybody's going to make it through that. And for me it was a choice. I had the option to stay. I wasn't pushed out, but I just said, you know what? I'm ready to go do my own thing. I spent the last 10 years building something that I was an entrepreneur before I went there, and I got a little tired of being an entrepreneur, and I said I want to just go work somewhere. So I did that for 10 years, and now here I am back in the entrepreneurship kind of arena. And as far as consultants go, not every I would state that not every consultant is an entrepreneur. I think that in
Hmm.
my field there are people that start their own corporation and just want to get their services out to people and they just want to kind of do that, and there's people that want to grow an empire, and I want to grow well beyond just being Doug Levy Consulting. So I've already put the processes and procedures in place to do that. I've started to segment out my work. I've already hired people. I've started to build a couple of different models with the way that I do it. But the COO thing came about. I literally sat down with a whiteboard and a close friend, and tried to figure out what I was going to do with the next stage of my career. And, do I want to go into insurance? Do I want to start a business? Do I want to go into business with somebody that I know and like and trust, and have shared interests with? And I landed on, I really like teaching, because a lot of what I do is teach, right? Like I come in and I execute, which is the difference. But while I'm executing, I'm teaching, because I don't intend to be around forever. And I have to, it's give a man a fish, he eats for a day type of thing. So I have to teach my clients the value of what I'm doing or what we're doing together while we're doing it, so that they can kind of carry that on. Because like you said, growing from 1 million to 100 million, it's no small feat. And there's going to be all these steps along the way. Typically at 1, 3, 10, and 30 are kind of the known revenue bands where you need to make some major transitions, because what was working before will not work to get you to the next level. So I absolutely love it. One of my clients, I was telling her how much I love working with her and her company, and she said, "Your vibe attracts your tribe." So my vibe is attracting my tribe, and I'm really, really enjoying all the people that I get to work with, all the employees, all the owners. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. So, Doug, I'm going to test you.
Let's
A
see
lot of
it.
people go from corporate America, feel like they have a talent or some sort of dream or passion, take their shingle, put it up, and go, I'm in business, baby. I'm my own business owner. I can make all my decisions. I'm the man. I'm the woman. It is what it is, right? So tell us a little bit more about, you went to go hang your own shingle. I
Yeah.
love that you made the very vital point of not being Doug Levy, consulting, being
Yep.
Lexington Rose and a
Yep.
brand behind it.
Yep.
Obviously, there's some continuity between personal and business brand and some
Yep.
things that are going on in the marketplace that we are learning from day to day, right?
Yep. Yep.
From other big names as well.
For sure.
But where was that point of, okay, hey, I'm in business. This is the type of service I believe I can bring to the marketplace. And what were you doing? Was it more current clients that maybe you had in the insurance world that you had built relationships with that you went and marketed to, that now you're Lexington Rose? Or how did you do that from a marketing standpoint?
So there's a lot to it. You know that. The
Sure.
the first thing that I think is important, which I kind of already stated, is not everybody is an entrepreneur. And not everybody should be an entrepreneur, and not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. So one of the very like COO things that I do is somebody comes up with an idea, and I want to tell you why it's a bad idea. Because if you can defend your position, then it's a good idea. So a COO's job, and I used to tell this to my boss all the time, I used to say, you don't pay me to say yes to everything that you come up with. You pay me to try to poke holes in your ideas. And then when they pass muster, then we execute. So I think doing that on your own is not easy to do. And I think if somebody wants to be an entrepreneur, they should challenge that assumption, because it's very easy to do, especially in the United States. It's very easy to go online to your state's, Secretary of State or department, corporations department, sign up a corporation. You can go on ChatGPT and it'll tell you how to get a federal ID number and all that kind of stuff. It's dangerously easy to do, but it's not for everybody, because then you need to start thinking about all of these other things. And you can scrap your way through it, but you're gonna get to a point where if it's not something you really want to do, it can get pretty painful. So in building my practice, I've communicated with a lot of other consultants that I want to subcontract work to, or potentially bring on as a part of my team. And I always try to find out, is this an entrepreneurial consultant who is better suited to be kind of running their own business and making their own brand? Or is this somebody who's good at something specific and wants to just be able to do that? So then,
Hmm.
I try to align myself with people where my entrepreneurial skill set and desire is a good match for them to be in an environment to work in. And as far as marketing, for me, it's mostly been referrals. I mean, when I started this, I said, who can I reach out to that might just give me a crack at it? And started out with a little bit of imposter syndrome. And then I had one client who was a friend of mine who said, I've been looking for like an operations consultant to help me out. So let's see what you got. And I started working for her, and it's been amazing since then. And I get referrals from her, and I get referrals from those people, and so a lot of it has been referral based. The speaking engagements that I do, I end up, if you get me in a room with somebody, I've got a pretty good case to state, and it's a lot of it is kind of the right messaging, right person, right time.
Hmm.
So as long as you're getting out there, it'll bear fruit. You join the networking groups, you show up. And if you show up, all of a sudden there's somebody, you said something compelling to somebody who either needs you or knows somebody who needs you, and it ends up working out.
So it's interesting, right? A lot of people I've had on the podcast over the last 2, 3 years have been in this fractional industry that I think over the last 10 years, it's just flourished,
It's
right? I mean,
exploded, yeah.
a lot of talent out there, a lot of people that has said to said, okay, I'm going to hang my shingle and be a fractional something or other.
Yep.
When you think about CEO, COO, CTO, CMO,
Yep.
CO,
Yep.
CIO, CDO,
Yep.
CRO. I actually
Yep.
challenged my AI friend. I'm like, hey, how does chief revenue officer, liked in the marketplace, or how does
Yeah.
CIO, CDO, whatever. So what I'm getting at is let let the audience understand really what a COO is doing. Now, you challenging the CEO or the founder is a component that I love the phrase the way you put it. I actually haven't heard it that way
Oh yeah.
from a COO perspective. And I
Sure.
know a few that are super successful that have had some great exits with companies. Tell us from your perspective, what is that driver and mentality of that when you're going into that company to help?
Sure. That's a great question. So typically, the businesses that I'm working with are small enough that they typically don't already have somebody in a full-time operations role that is entirely focused on working on the business as opposed to in the business, and has the appropriate skill sets for doing it. So a lot of smaller businesses, they either don't have that person at all and the owner's doing everything, or they have somebody that is, their best account manager is also kind of the office manager who also kind of dabbles in human resources, and they hire as a team. And these are all very, very normal things. I come to this with absolutely no judgment, because
Mhm.
businesses that can scrap their way up from nothing have all of my respect. And people typically call me or reach out to me when they're going through the pains that come with not being able to focus enough on working on the business, or not having the skill sets to work on the business. Most entrepreneurs have their own talents, right? So you've got the plumber who starts a plumbing company because he's a great plumber and he's well known in the community. He knows nothing about overtime exemptions and knows nothing about, writing SOPs and stuff like that. So businesses that call me typically have outgrown their own capabilities and bring in somebody like me to help them move to the next level. So what I'm looking at, I like to think that as an operations person, I have more of a range than most, because operations is typically how the business runs. What are the processes and procedures and standards, and how are those communicated to everybody in the company? So I come into a lot of companies that are small but profitable and working, and everybody knows what to do, but none of it's written down anywhere. So there's a lot of like tribal knowledge. And when there's tribal knowledge, that leads to inconsistency. It leads to inconsistency in employment experience, client outcomes. And then when you hire somebody, it's very, very difficult to train somebody on workflows and processes and procedures that are inconsistent and not written down.
Mhm.
So when you want to scale and increase your headcount, it's very important that you write down all the things that you're doing. So a lot of what we do is we help people write down all the things that we're doing. Um, I've found that a lot of my work is very, very closely tied to the culture of an organization, and that's something that I'm proud of having developed at my last company is really maintaining and growing and organizing the culture, internal culture of the business of who we are, what we do, what our identity is, how we treat each other, how we value our employees, how we value our work, how we treat our work. So there's a lot of cultural components in what I do where I can help business owners make sure that their employees feel valued and appreciated and that we're all rowing in one boat in the same direction. So it goes beyond, oh, I need somebody to help me write down SOPs or standard operating procedures and really delves into, you mentioned something at the very beginning about businesses growing their top line, but margin is compressing. So their revenue is growing, but their profit is decreasing percentage wise. And you get caught in that runaway train, and next thing you know, you're just working your butt off for not a lot of money. And nobody wants to be doing that. So it's really, I hate to use the term holistic because it's kind of doesn't mean a whole lot, but I think people kind of get the gist. It's a holistic approach to what are you doing? How are you doing it? How do people know what to do? How is that written down? Who are your clients? How do your clients perceive you? Are your clients that you serve the best clients that you should be serving, or should you be segmenting differently? How are you treating your salespeople and your service people? Do they feel valued? Are they being compensated properly? Those types of things. And it all of that somehow tends to crystallize into like, all right, now we've got what it takes to grow and move in a new direction because things don't feel clunky or unclear anymore when we get through the process.
Well, I'll say that last 45 seconds is like a little mini masterclass on what a COO should really be thinking like, right? So I
Thank
love
you.
that. I love that. And Go for CO community, tie into that, right? I'm sure that we'll make a short out of it and put it all over
Sure.
the internet. But that last 45 seconds is such a great window. When I talk to C-suites that are fractional, and when you think about 90+% of companies out there that are, yeah, create their own shingle, they don't make it to seven figures. And a lot of
Yep.
times it's because they don't know that, as a founder, maybe that first couple $100,000 in sales is your responsibility. But when you start going to half a million, a million, three
Yep.
million, the team around you, unless I'm mistaken that AI is just going to take over everything, I
Nope.
think human beings are just very needed in that scalable, mantra of things. And I know
Yes.
as a COO, we'll probably get into it, where workflow automation comes through and some
Sure.
things that are obviously being eased by AI, but not necessarily
Yep.
replaced by AI.
Absolutely.
So we'll definitely get into that. So, all right, look, you went through the stage of being a little bit disrupted, meaning like seeing something that you saw that was very valuable, but not having a piece of it, having known that you were in an industry that you took a lot of knowledge from, built something within, and now went on your own again. So from entrepreneur to intrapreneur to
Yep.
entrepreneur,
Yep.
I feel very kindred spirit to it because that's what I've done in my life.
Awesome.
And I actually think a lot of hybrid is nowadays a big deal. Because I agree with you. There, in the banking world, you see a lot of business owners, right? And for me, I remember in my days of my beginning career after I sold my business, I saw business owners doing 3 million, 5 million, 10 million, right? And not making a lot
Yep.
themselves because
Yep.
they were overweighted with talent or whatever, all that type of stuff.
Yep.
And it's interesting because as an entrepreneur, you can make 150, 250, $300,000, if not millions, if you're a C-suite
Yep.
person
Yep.
at big enough companies. And there's that yin yang, right? So what's been the mindset for you when you said, "Hey, I'm not going to be Doug Levy. I'm going to be, you know, I don't get
Lexington Rose.
Lexington.
Yep.
I need my glasses all the time,
Get
but
those specs on, man.
I like to take them off.
Yeah.
Lexington Rose. Sorry about that.
Sure.
So at what point did you say to yourself, all right, Lexington Rose is really the brand I want to build?
Sure.
And then you mentioned having aggressively hired that first one, aggressively
Yep.
hired the next one. How did
Yep.
you start to put that structure together? And people are probably wondering, well, where'd you get the money? Did you bootstrap this? Did you have some investors? Blah, blah, blah.
I started from scratch with nothing, and I've got what it takes, and I learned that very, very quickly, and I've got the confidence and I've got the skill set to do it. So to pat myself on the back, I just came from nothing, and I started doing it. So I just know that running your own show is I've got a family, I've got small kids, and I need to do what's best for my family. And doing what's best for my family means that I can't build a business that depends solely on my existence to bring in income. So if I'm going into business, it can't revolve entirely around me in order for my family to be secure over the long term. I come from insurance. I know what happens to people.
Mhm.
I have that risk mindset where I know that people actually do get struck by lightning and hit by cars and all these tragic things that happen. And I knew that I wanted to build a business and not a job. And I made that decision very deliberately. So from the beginning, I mean, listen, at the very beginning, you just got to start making money. So I did that. I started with one client, and one client became two clients, and I ended up landing a couple of whales like that. I like to say I got lucky, but luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? So I landed some good business that gave me some breathing room, and I immediately started thinking about, okay, how can I build this in a way that it's not entirely dependent upon me forever? It's going to be dependent on me for a while, but not forever. So I started being mindful of when I do my engagements, what pieces could I potentially delegate to somebody else? What parts of what I do can I hire somebody else to do? What can an administrative person do for me if I were to hire somebody for X dollars a year? What could I do with that bandwidth? How could I grow with that bandwidth? And then one of the things that I did is I said my engagements are typically fairly high ticket. And that audience is somewhat narrow. It's not every business owner is going to want to spend or is able to spend what they need to spend to hire us for our services. So I started developing bite-sized chunks of what I do into a separate product. So I actually created a brand that I call LogicWise Ops that
Hmm.
I started to build. One of the things that I noticed as I was starting to work is every business that I've touched so far has had major flaws in the way that they hire people. And one of my claims to fame from my past life is I was running a business with 45 people, and our average employee tenure was 9 years. We had
Hmm.
turnover in the single digits. So I got good at hiring and keeping the right people. So I actually built a system called the LogicWise hiring system that teaches a business owner exactly how to go through a deliberate, disciplined hiring process so that they don't make the mistakes that people make when they hire somebody on gut feel or their biases pop up when they're reviewing resumes and things like that. So those are a couple of the things that I've done. So number one, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but number one is really being mindful of how I can delegate work to other people. And number two is how can I expand my market by moving into a different space where I can sell a product for a smaller amount of money to a wider audience that doesn't require this like really all-in consulting engagement type bandwidth for me. So it's been successful so far.
No, I love it. It makes me think of a book by Hermosi called $100 Million Money Models.
Okay.
And it's very wise what you did there, because I think Go for SEO community, if you think about what Doug just shared, is from a high level, you have to hit a certain price point for you to be able to, like you said, be effective, not be stressed, give the
Yes.
best you can. But then for those that are maybe on the outskirts that can't afford you, you created a tool, right?
Yeah.
A way,
Yeah.
a system, and a model that they could take advantage for, I don't know what it might be, $99 a month or
Several
something like
thousand,
that.
several thousand dollars. It's a several $1,000s investment instead of a 5 to 6 digit investment.
Okay. So, I mean, that's so genius, because ultimately now you open up yourself to a different market, but you don't have to be
Yep.
there.
Yep.
It's a,
Yep.
right. So
Yeah,
it's
I
a,
built the whole system to deliver that. The delivery of that process takes a lot less time, and I can hire other people to do it. So the margins are there, and I just have access to a greater audience. So I'm selling different things to different people to maximize the durability, right? Because once that product is created and exists, it no longer relies on my existence or ability to work to be sold, and that's important to me in terms of just my family's security over the long term.
yeah, yeah. Because I mean, you create a mechanism of sales, right? That
Yep.
you market, and if they hit this criteria, then they can go up to see what the services are from the five or
Yep.
six figures sense. Or if they don't, and they're okay with, being taught almost like a DIY,
Yep.
it's very convenient that way. So really interesting. I love that angle as a consulting firm, and teaching, other people to be able to have that mindset of being able to bring something of value. And when you niche into a certain segment, that doesn't mean that you can't serve them. You just have to serve them differently, right? So
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
it's a really cool.
The way that they need to be served, not the way that
Yeah,
you want to serve. So I tried to figure out what worked and built something around it.
I love it. So from a standpoint of pricing, right? When did you start to get comfortable understanding, like, hey, okay, this is going to take X amount of time. There's a lifetime value of this client. I'd like to keep them for 13 months or
Sure.
42 months or whatever it's turned out to be. What's been the average lifetime, stay with that client and the value of it? And then how did you start to determine, I'm assuming initially you're like, $300 an hour, I'll do it for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah, that's a great question, and it was not easy, and it was kind of like, again, there was a little bit of imposter syndrome and a little bit of what's the phrase? I've heard it so many, and I've started to use it. It's building the plane while you're flying it.
mm,
So I did a lot of that where I started out saying like, all right, I want to make this much money. And I backed into how many hours, like I backed into an hourly rate based on how much money I want to make in a year without killing myself so I can spend time with my family because that's important to me and how I can kind of just preserve my mental state and be able to give my clients my best. I'm not trying to overextend myself. So I backed into a number and I started to get a couple of yeses on that number with no hesitation whatsoever. So the number went up. And then I started at that number and got no hesitation whatsoever. And the number went up. So I've gotten to the point where I've done enough of this where I'm able to deliver so much value. I mean, think about it. If you take a business that is doing $2 million in revenue and you add 6 points of margin, that's $120,000. That's in year one. And then you grow this business to 3 million and it's still leveraging that 6 points of margin. That's $180,000. Get to 5 million, that's $300,000. So I can show my lifetime value to a client and it's clear as day. So people that have the size and the profitability to be able to make the type of investment that they make in my firm, the return is crystal clear, and it outlives my engagement with them. So believe it or not, I've only been in business. This month is actually a year, and I'm still working with every client that I start with a 6 month engagement because I think that any longer than that is kind of too long to really map things out clearly. And shorter than that is just, it's not enough of a runway. So I start with 6 months and then I kind of go to 3 month renewals. And some of those 3 month renewals remain at the same intensity if there's still quite a bit more work to do. And some of them kind of step down in intensity as the needs go from like major transformation to just kind of a little bit more maintenance.
So what are you projecting? I mean, just from a model standpoint, what do you think your lifetime value will be with a client, long term?
It depends on what I'm fixing and improving, but I know one business in particular that is trying to triple in size in the next decade, which is something that I've already done
Hmm.
in my past and know how to do it. Um, the things that we're going to put in place there, I wouldn't be surprised if the lifetime value to that business was a minimum of $20 million.
Hmm.
And then there's other businesses that, I mean, that number sounds really, really pie in the sky, but for this type of business and what I know the metrics are and what I know the multiples are, it's not. Like that's real $20 million in enterprise value, if not more. Other businesses, more modestly, I had one. I'll give you another kind of a more accessible example. I came into a business that when they first hired me, they said we're having a horrible time keeping people at our front desk. We keep losing people. We've had insane turnover. I need you to help me hire somebody for my front desk. And this was like, say, a fully loaded $50,000 a year role. This client paid me $50,000 for a 6-month engagement. And in the first 6 weeks, I streamlined so much of their work that they didn't even need that person any longer. So 6 weeks into my engagement, I've saved this person $50,000 a year for the rest of the time that they're in business. So you look at it that way, if I can take a 30-person business and reduce their need for headcount by 20%, that's 6 fully loaded salaries, which could be anywhere from, 300,000 to $1 million a year fully loaded. So the
Yeah.
economics are the more I talk it out with you, I think I need to increase my rates again.
I love it. Well, I was going to ask when we were in the pricing model mindset and talking about it,
Sure.
with the experience that you had with the private equity coming in and not having equity, is there any component to Lexington Rose that asked for equity or upside equity? Like, is there any positioning that you've modeled yourself into being able to get equity from the clients that you're working with?
That's a great question. I've definitely explored it,
Hmm.
but I haven't attempted to do it yet. I think my main concern is conflict of interest. So if I want to serve a lot of different businesses and I don't want to have any sort of industry or vertical exclusivity, I'm struggling with the thought of taking a piece of a business and then serving another similar business that's like a potential competitor or sharing my intellect between those two businesses. Because when you take on equity, you 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 get a piece of that business, but that business deserves a piece of you in return, I believe.
Mm.
And there's only so much of me to go around. So I've been turning that over in my head. I know that consulting for equity is a model. I haven't branched out into it yet. I'm still kind of on the upswing in terms of just making sure that everything here is working very stably, where I don't want to forego actual revenue in exchange for paper revenue. I'm not prepared to do that yet, but once I am, it's something that I'll consider. I find it fascinating. I think there's a place for it, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, and that could eventually be a business unit for you, right?
Yeah,
Lexington
absolutely.
Rose business unit that you guys, that's what you do in
Absolutely.
that division of Lexington Rose. Obviously, the queue that you're building this as a business will allow
Yep.
for that complexity to build out
Absolutely.
from
Absolutely.
there. It's very interesting, and I agree. I mean, I think the first year, like you said, you built it through initial contacts. You then thought to yourself, all right, well, I charge this, and they were no hesitation.
Yep.
Whenever you get that pushback of, let's say, 30% or so is what I think of is then you start to think, okay, maybe I've hit a threshold, right, of where I can
Yep.
go as high as I can. But really, really interesting. So, all right. So as we start to end the podcast, we talk a lot about CEO, right? So
Yep.
client experience. E is for engagement, and I'll kind of walk you through that one because it's a
Okay.
personal one. And then O is for operational excellence. So C,
Okay.
if you think about Lexington Rose Consulting from a value proposition standpoint, somebody's sitting here listening to this, listening to Doug Levy, they want to engage with you, but they're thinking to themselves like, what is the value prop? Yeah, I've heard it in this podcast, but let me hear it from him. Let's say 30, 60 seconds. What does that look like to you from Lexington Rose Consulting to the client experience?
The value proposition to my clients is a lot of the pains that you're experiencing will go away. So people come to me because they're hurting in a certain way. That hurt can be different. Sometimes it's we're losing money. Sometimes we're sliding backwards. Sometimes it's the business is too dependent upon me. And sometimes it's I've hit a flat spot in my growth and I need to move past it. Whatever those pains are, they disappear. And you'd be surprised how quickly it happens when you get the right person involved. The impact shows up very, very, very quickly and pays for itself far beyond your imagination.
Love it. Very succinct and to the point. I love it. All right, my friend Doug. This is something that I changed over the years, and I
Tell
love
me.
it because every time I ask this question, the individual is a little bit different. So engagement. When you think about Doug, you mentioned your family a few times. You mentioned your independence as an entrepreneur, inside a company, entrepreneur. But how do you like to engage? Are you a person that likes to go to events? Do you like a cigar and a whiskey? We were talking offline about golf, if, and destination type things, experiential. What's two or three different ways that you enjoy, and it could be from your family to the business owners that you deal with, to clients, to employees. How should people think of engaging with Doug Levy?
Over good food.
All
Over
right.
good food and a cocktail or six. It's that's the best way to connect with people. I've had the opportunity to travel around the world, and the best way to get to know people is through food. If you and I are sitting at a table together and enjoying something together, I think that that's really special. That's my absolute favorite.
Okay. Okay. I love it, man. Your answers are very straight and to the point. I've had people like, I want to go rock climbing. I want to, walk
Hell
through
no.
a lake. So, but that's the uniqueness, right? It's we're all
Yeah,
built a little bit differently as human beings, and
very
it's
true.
that curiosity of how. And it's interesting, right? So, if you heard this, right, Doug, where do you actually live out of? Where is
I'm
your
in Fort
operation?
Lauderdale, Florida.
Okay, Florida. So yeah,
Yep.
not as good a restaurants as Chicago, but
Not
pretty good.
quite.
So,
Not quite.
but awesome, awesome. So, all right, last one is operational excellence, and we didn't touch too much on it, but we probably will arrive in it within this one.
Sure.
AI, Monday.com, like all the HubSpot. Like, what are some of the tools that, as a younger firm, that you've initially invested in, and what are some projected things that you look at, or is there scalability with already something that you have that you could implement more as the need develops?
So this is great. So I consider myself I'm at like this generational inflection point, I think. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase geriatric millennial. I I'm a geriatric millennial, so I'm gonna be 44 in a couple of months. So very beginning of the millennial generation, and I'm just now starting to experience technology that doesn't quite make sense to me. Technology has always made sense to me throughout my life, but I'm starting to get to that age where there are certain things that aren't making as much sense to me as they used to. And I mean, the pace of change has just increased so dramatically that AI is going a lot faster than I can really keep up with it. So my honest answer to that question is I'm heavily leveraging ChatGPT and Claude. I'm on the Claude bus now. I think a lot of people like ChatGPT started it all, started as just kind of fancy Google, and then people started using it for interesting stuff. Claude is really showing itself using Monday.com, using HubSpot. dabbled in Notion, but those things are traveling a lot faster than I can keep up with while I deal with a lot of my other responsibilities. So I've made it a point to make sure that I align myself with people that know things that I don't know. I'm not trying to fool myself into keeping up with something that's just not in my arena of core competencies. But I've always believed that if you can't do something yourself, you hire somebody else that's really competent that can do it for you. So I've made sure to align myself with people that know a lot more about things like this than I do. And I recommend that to anybody that's feeling like any sort of technology is outside their grasp, is that for every person that feels like it's outside their grasp, there's 1,000 people who understand it perfectly. Find those people, hire them, pay them appropriately, be their friends, and it's not going to stop you from achieving your goals.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I was thinking to myself, Doug went out on his own and he's a consultant to companies, but does Doug, and I didn't, ask this previously, but from an operational standpoint, do you also have a coach? Do you have some consultants that consult you, or do you have maybe a fiduciary advisory board that you're putting together for Lexington by chance?
Not at the moment, but what I've always done is I've always believed in the power of community and the power of having
Hmm.
a support system. And one of the things that I have I don't really know if I've ever spoken to anybody else that's had it, but I went to a seminar once and somebody was talking about like, hey, find yourself an accountability buddy. Like find yourself a
Hmm.
buddy who like you guys can go to breakfast every Friday morning and like, you know, hold each other accountable for whatever your goals are and stuff like that. And it sounds kind of stupid, but I'm like, you know what? Let me try it. I did this a while back. And long story short is I did that. And the person that I tried it with wasn't really reliable and wasn't showing up as much as they should have. So I parted ways with that person and I found somebody else. And long story short, I've been meeting with a friend or talking on the phone. Sometimes it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we're in different states or countries. 5 o'clock in the morning every Friday for 15 years. And he's
Wow.
an entrepreneur. He's married. He has small kids. So this is somebody that really helps me, with perspective, knows me more intimately than almost everybody else except for my wife. And that's something that I've done to really keep myself grounded and get the support that I need, in addition to just having other kind of casual mentors and stuff.
I love it. No, it's so interesting, right? When you go in on this voyage, right, this journey of entrepreneurship, of hanging your shingle, of
Yep.
determining how you're going to go show up into the marketplace, of who your ICP is and this thing is, right?
Yep.
Ultimately, I'll shamelessly plug my book. We
There you
talked
go.
about we talk about assessing, right? So at point A, you're assessing everything, right? Family, fitness, finance, faith, fun, right? And
Yep.
those are the 5 F's of life. But in a business, you're assessing initially kind of like, hey, well, how do I go to market? Or what are the tools and all that type of stuff? And you share so eloquently throughout this podcast of just why it is that Lexington Rose Consulting will be and is growing into a force of nature in this space, because you have to determine, right, then who you align with. That's the ideal client, and then being able to do products within clients that maybe can't afford you, as you
Yep.
shared earlier with what's it called again? Advice,
Logic wise.
Logic Wise, right? Like
Yeah,
cool
logic
name like
wise.
that. So, and then accountability, and the last one is taking action, right? But I love the formula that you've used.
Thank you.
Super excited for you over the next 24 to 36 months to see kind
Oh,
of where you
heck yeah.
go, and what you're going to become. So let people know how to contact you, Doug. What's the best way to, they see this podcast, they're like, you know what, I really would like to reach out to him, see if we can fit into the things that he's doing. What's the best way to connect?
Absolutely. Best way to connect with me is www.lexingtonroseconsulting.com. And if you want to check out more about my LogicWise hiring system, logicwisehiringsystem.com. So if either one of those things interests you, they both have contact methods to get in touch with me. Conversations are always free and discovery calls are always free. I'm always looking to connect with anybody that has an interest or has an issue that they think that my team and I can solve. And I'd love the opportunity.
Well, I love it. So, look, Go over to your community. If you're not a subscriber, all right, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're growing this community over and over and over. Some new things are coming up in July that I shared with you many months ago. That third quarter is going to be my unveiling of some things going on. If you haven't picked up the book, The 4A Formula, Untangle Any Challenge, and Think Like a CEO, many back end bonus chapters of gentlemen like Doug, and then my own stories of being an entrepreneur and intrapreneur, and the successes and the failures within that, and creating a formula for myself in my own life that hope it'll help you. So, Doug, thanks so much for being a part of the
My
Go For Sale
pleasure.
channel.
Thanks for having me.